Restoring Men and History. So we're going to take a look at an interesting article about men today from theamericanmind.org and comment on it. It's called Forging Fewer Freakazoids by Alex Perez at americanmind.org. And it deals with some men, so I thought as men we should take a look at it and see what's going on with and his take on it and what he's seeing. He starts with America's young men face an acute crisis of masculinity. Well, we know that's true, right? We talk about that. Freak culture in America was unknown until the late 60s, he says, when youth rebellion was specifically expressed as complete rejection of the forms and norms of respectable society. The hippies turned away from their parents' values of diligence, sexual continence, and cleanliness, and embraced libertinism, immediate gratification. So for sure, there's a lot of people wanting it fast today, right? And there's a lot of immediate gratification and entitlement. People want it really rapidly now. I know this from hearing conversations and talking to people. So they want success rapidly, or some not at all. So, you know, putting in years of work is anathema to some. So going on and filth, but this was a communal movement based on collective repudiation of societal standards in favor of a new order organized under the legendary freak flag. Freakiness in this sense became a new conformism, and there's a lot of conformism going on right now, right? People are afraid of what people say of them today. The freaks of those days took over the American culture, and we know how important culture is. Quote, edge is in the sense of being near the margins of society, maintains its cool factor, but today's true edge dwellers are no longer sexy or appealing, right? That's correct. Indeed, the new outlaws of society bear less resemblance to the freaks of yesteryear and look more like the pathetic school shooting incels who now intrude into media consciousness. So he's now talking about when he was in high school and what he sees today versus when he was in high school, which is interesting. So he says when he was in high school around 20 years ago, the levels of adolescent weirdness one encountered rarely tipped over into the realm of antisocial. So we're looking at weirdness versus antisocial in men today and in society. So I thought it was interesting. And he goes on to say there were nerds and jocks and all these different goths and brooding goths and the shady loner. But the weirdness of the type that unsettled him, that has you nearest looking for the nearest exit, he says, was a rarity back then. He says, I was into sports back then, but also liked literature and eccentric artist geniuses, so kept a lookout for charming freaks. I made some interesting friends this way, but these freaky types were basically as well adjusted as I was. So he's looking at well-adjusted for versus maladjusted today. They just occupied a different role, a different social role in the caste system, he goes on to say. An encounter with a true freak during my senior year verified that all the other weirdos I'd met up to that point were merely normies of varying styles and aesthetics. Some were sadder than others, but they were all going to make it. And this is what he's talking about through here. Who's going to make it, who's going to not? The reality of the true freakazoid, here's his word, freakazoid, was made jarringly clear by an obese young man named Joseph. I first saw Joseph in gym class, where he sat in the stands completely alone, wearing a muumuu. A muumuu is a woman's brightly colored dress, usually Hawaiian, especially the ones worn in Hawaii. He goes on, my school had a program for at-risk youth and another for kids with developmental disabilities. But as far as I knew, Joseph didn't belong to either. He was unaffiliated. The PE teacher didn't even bother to call Joseph down from the rafters. Where he stayed all semester, he knew, as I did, that he was not going to make it. I never saw Joseph anywhere else on campus, a ghost in a muumuu who only materialized in the gym to torment us with his antisociality. Joseph still haunts me. I think of Joseph often because these days, more and more, I'm seeing young men that remind me of him. So he's seeing all these men that remind him of Joseph. He says he's seen young men who are completely outside society, which means that they pose a danger to society if they aren't assimilated into the realm of those well-adjusted. No one wants guys like Joseph to exist. But more than ever, Joseph and his maladjusted brethren are everywhere, so he's seen them more than I have. Yeah, apparently he's seen more Josephs. These young men are broken. That's a bad thing, right? And there are a lot of broken men. I do see that. And many of them are growing violent, so I don't have those stats, but that could be true. I don't know. But many are just staying home or disengaged, I think, too. So you've got the disengaged, and he's saying that some are becoming violent. I don't know what the percentage is on that, but this is what he's noticing. So we'll go on. Some are just disengaging, right? Not wanting to get married, wanting to just stay and play video games, porn, stay on the internet, stay online, and just disengage from society. That would be the book Men on Strike covers that. But I get the point. Isolation can lead to problems, mental problems. So he goes on, the line between the well-adjusted and the maladjusted has always been thin, but when I was growing up, there were structures and supports and an overall cultural ethos in place that redirected the antisocial tendencies present in all young men and, at the very least, kept the great freaks at bay, which is why it was such an anomaly to see someone like Joseph. So cultural ethos is important, right? Culture leads politics. So you had peers, he's saying, he did, and men to keep you in line. I think I'm going to add some comments here. Let me just rephrase. I'm going to add some comments. You need men to call you out. You need men that you know. You need friends. There were maybe a few more involved fathers back then, so let's go back to his point now. There were more churches that were people attended. Movies were probably better, showing that culture ethos of hard work and all of that you could succeed with effort and energy, and that you could rise. Maybe more people believed in free markets and capitalism and all those good values. So you have a lot of things going back, and the attacks on men and boys have escalated, right? So that's not a good cultural ethos when you think you're the bad guy and everything you do is bad and assertiveness is bad and manly qualities are bad. But no matter what the culture's doing, as a man, you have to go get it. You may fail, but you've got to get up again. So also, I think they taught get along with others, play well with others, don't be a loner, be considerate and think of others. I think those values were taught, right? Back to his points. All you had to do was get through those brutal late teens, early 20 years, during which the antisocial impulse is its strongest, and you'd make it, he's saying. You might even be a success or even a good man, but you wouldn't end up being a Joseph. So he's talking about this Joseph. The big difference between then and now, and the reason why society is creating more antisocial men, is that everything had to go wrong. So he's talking about today, only a few things have to go wrong, and you can end up like Joseph. Back then, everything had to go wrong, so it's more difficult today. Where are they? Who's teaching right and wrong? You got a period of relativism going on, and then you went past relativism. Everybody's saying masculinity is bad. Manliness doesn't even come up. We talk a lot about the virtues, but we're not teaching courage. We're not teaching the virtues, wisdom, courage, perseverance. All those great manly virtues too are not being taught. So where are you going to learn that from? How are you going to learn to be a man? How are you going to learn not to be a Joseph? And if you're beaten down by society and you feel like the law is against you, and Men on Strike says a lot of men believe the law is against them, and you feel the world's against you, you may just disengage or you may get angry. So I think there's two large choices, probably others. You can get angry, you can disengage, or you can say, hey, I'm a man, I'm going to go do this, I'm still going to be on the mark, and I'm going to go do my purpose and my mission. I'm going to get on purpose because men need a purpose, right? And I'm going to do what I need to do, get out of my head and go forward no matter what society is saying. Because you can do that. You can make a choice. your thoughts control you, you can say, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Let's stick with this. So you don't want society doesn't give you your value anyway, right? It comes from here, here, here. So that's where you get your values from and your value from. So you can overcome it. But anyway, let's go back to his piece. We're diverging there. He says the average young man who would have been okay 20 years ago. Okay, we talked about that. If he doesn't get a break, he'll end up with Joseph. This is true. He goes on to say, where would you? It doesn't take him much to get on the right track, though. A positive early interaction with a girl or a good coach or a mentor, that's true, right? You get a good girlfriend who guides you, or a man who guides you, or a coach or a mentor, or a good friend. A girlfriend could give you confidence if you know how to deal with it. Or a good friend or a group of men. I'm adding, but basic traditional male experience, he says, are hard to come by. That's true, right? Where do you get traditional male experiences now in this world, in this society? And they're looked down upon, devalued, right? You got to go get in a men's group. You've got to go build friendships. Seek out and get male friendship. He goes on, due to the shifts in the way we talk about and treat masculinity and the technological transformations of the last 15 years, the line is blurred such that when one encounters a strange young man, it is simply safer to assume that he's a danger. So he must assume they're a danger. If he's not already radicalized, he's certainly on his way, perhaps. But again, I think many are just disengaged and not going to harm people. But anyway, let's go on. I'm sure you got a point that some are, and that can move you to that. So you do need to not be isolated, and you do need friends. Back to the piece. You need someone to correct you. You need someone to guide you, to call you out, to say, hey, when you're headed toward crazy, say, hey, that's crazy. Get back in line, man. So you need a group of guys or a man to say, no, you're not that. You're this. That's crazy. So back to the piece. You need a friend to do that, right? Someone the guy trusts. One of the main causes of the rise of antisocial young men is the pathologizing of traditional masculinity. The normal young man who was a little antisocial and rough around the edges years ago had some room to maneuver, but he got out of what was that self-imposed rut, he goes on to say. So boys need time to develop, right? It takes longer for a boy to develop than a girl. Maybe today it's for both, but usually it takes longer for boys to become a man, and they need to be made into men. It does not just happen. So what society does, what your groups that you're in. So the same, now he goes on to say, the same very young man today would be labeled toxically masculine today by a feminized society that does not have the best interest of men in mind. Well, that's true, right? This society doesn't have the best interest for boys and men. We know that for sure. Men feel attacked. They feel they're told they're bad. You can look at multiple books on this, boy crisis, men on strike, et cetera, et cetera. The masculinity is bad. Assertiveness is bad. Being a man is bad. So going on, he says a young man is now stigmatized as toxically masculine if he's heterosexual, stoic, interested in maximizing his physical strength through weightlifting, and engages generally in primate dominance behavior. So also it's not elevated, right? The behavior that's elevated, it can be crazy now. They can elevate it and make you special if you're some special category. Calling someone toxic might breed toxicity. This dynamic is completely unacknowledged by our feminized school culture. Christine Hoff Sommers wrote a book a long time ago, probably, that said the schools were created for girls now, and the focus was on girls, not boys. And you've kind of seen that. Less men going to college, less men doing well in high school. So I think Christina Hoff Sommers had it right. And if you keep telling someone they're toxic, you may create that, right? Keep telling someone you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. Men are bad, men are bad, you may create that, right? And on the other side, if you keep devaluing manliness, where are your protectors going to be when you need men? When a tyrant is lurking, where are the protectors going to be? When the bad guys come, who's going to stand up to the bad guys? Who's going to protect you when people want to hurt you? if you don't have manliness and strong men in a society. You need strong men. You need courageous men.